Sure. My name is Michael Nephew. I'm Eastern Band Cherokee and also of Seneca and Cayuga descent.
Wonderful. And before we start, do I have your permission to record the interview?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So what brought you to this event today?
I was asked to come and be one of the speakers at it. I've known John for a while, long time. I've known, because I've been in the community for 40 years, so yeah.
Absolutely. So thinking about sort of being in the community and being part of the movement, can you describe if you've had any involvement in the American Indian movement, what that's been?
I haven't really had a lot of direct involvement in the American Indian movement. I've been supporting them at different functions that they've had, but I've never had actual involvement with it. I've had friends that go back in a long time. You know, one of them worked for a law office here in town and was able to provide them information because she was Chippewa and friends with Dennis and Vern and Clyde. And I used to meet up with Clyde when he came into town.
Wonderful. And so thinking about what motivated you to also take part today and in some of these other particular events that you mentioned that you're sometimes part of as part of the community and also as an ally maybe to other people who are part of like local tribes and local communities. Sort of what's your motivation to sort of be part of that movement?
I've always been active in the community. I'm past president of a couple of the different Indian organizations, the American Indian Society of Washington, as well as the American Indian Intertribal Cultural Organization, you know, promoting Native communities. I worked with the Native American Legal Rights Organization in the, in 1978 to 1984.
So, thinking about the fact that we're here today celebrating what happened was past Indigenous Peoples Day, what do you think has DC, just this past year, changed the name and replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day? So why do you think this change happened when it did?
There are more people aware of the different atrocities that are going on. You know, there's been a big rise in notice of indigenous rights ever since the pipeline. You know, the no DAPL aspects, and also even with a lot with going on with the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So it brought a more. There's been a more awareness, I'd say, of the injustices in America. It's been more in the news as opposed to, I mean, it's always been there. It's just more in the news and more aware.
Right, so reaching more people maybe than before.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful. So thinking about, I am curious about your opinion because you have been such a long-standing member of this community and obviously so involved. Thinking about like Black Lives Matter and like the connection between the two movements, do you feel like there is like sort of a growing community around both movements?
It's actually been there all along. I mean, like, Muhammad Ali used to come to a lot of the indigenous protests back in the late 60s and early 70s. You know, some of my elders who were living here in the 60s and 70s were talking about being involved in the civil rights movement, being there with them. I've seen pictures of Malcolm X being with indigenous protests. So I mean, we have a lot of similarities in the oppression, most of us realize that it's a very similar thing. It's like if you're not white, then you really got a lot of. And it was even actually true for people who weren't part of the white people who were coming over. They would experience that too, like the Irish experienced that too. So, yeah, it's not new for the oppression of the majority. I mean, if you look at the Constitution, it's a good example of it. They didn't count all of the black people. They didn't count any of the Indians, and none of the women had any rights.
Yeah. So thinking about sort of this recent change from calling it Columbus Day to calling it Indigenous Peoples Day, what are your thoughts on that change in general? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a good change. I think it should have been a long time ago. I mean, he never, as I was mentioning, how can you discover an area where people are already? That's what my mother used to tell me. He never made it to the Americas. He got back to Spain and told him he'd been over to India. I mean, he never even made it to where he was going, and didn't even know he didn't make it. It was Amerigo Vespucci who was the one who realized that he had actually discovered a new land. He had not discovered a new land, but come upon a land unknown to them.
Yes, absolutely. So thinking about what brought about that change, and there's been a long time coming, sort of as you've described, this movement has been happening for a long time. What do you think ultimately sort of brought about this change in the name for DC in particular, but also in general?
Just like what I was saying earlier, there's more awareness of the injustices, and that he really wasn't the person that has been portrayed in history. It's a whitewashed history.
Right, absolutely. And so do you feel like, thinking about sort of, you mentioned your mother sort of passing on some history to you as well, do you feel like, can you talk about perhaps sort of divergences between this whitewashed history that so many of us often learn, as kids in school or in other places, versus this sort of history that maybe has been passed down or that you've had to search out, and like where those kind of diverge?
Well, a lot of that actually comes from the educational system. They teach the incomplete history. You know, I was lucky because in New York State we had so many Indian tribes there that they actually had a few weeks of Indian history in one of the years. And even then it was more about where we had been, not where we were, not where we are now, and not where we will be.
As a past tense rather than like as a present tense.
Yeah, yeah, and even and then Hollywood helped in that bad portrayal because they reinforce those stereotypes. They think a lot of people think we all lived in teepees, and one of my friends from high school, he got asked if he if he still lived in a teepee. Well, we weren't nomadic people. We had villages, and we didn't even use teepees. Teepees is the plains thing, but that's all they see in Hollywood is the plains thing. I read a review. I remember reading a review of The Last of the Mohicans, and it was classified as a Western. Yeah, a Western. I saw your reaction there. Yeah, that was my reaction too. It's like, really? Yeah, it was Connecticut. How? It wasn't even the western part of the colonies at that point, because New York existed as a colony then.
Thinking about where we are today with the event being held in Malcolm X Park, do you think there's significance to the event being held here in particular?
Yeah, I think it is because of the past cooperation and the communities working together. Like I said, I've seen pictures of Malcolm X at Indigenous protests with the American Indian movement. The same thing with Muhammad Ali. So yeah, I think it's very important that it's here at Malcolm X Park. I think it's probably the most appropriate place for it to be, because it also brings out that past history.
So I guess I would ask you to close if there's anything else you kind of want to discuss that we didn't cover today that you want to make sure is said.
Just that we need to keep moving forward in this, and that includes, at this point, a change in administration, because this administration is dismantling civil rights protection. It's dismantling environmental protections that have made our world better. And that's the big thing that we have to do. We have to look at what they are actually doing or not doing, as opposed to what say they are doing and not doing. And look at the actual facts of it, as opposed to the rhetoric.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to speak to us.
Okay.